After becoming certified as a teacher, I was part of the online dream interpretation course that they had. And I went through that whole rigorous process of being trained. You had to pass 2,000 dreams, write interpretations. It was brutal. It was brutal. And so I was their first released master certifier.
Wow.
I don't say that to brag because the process was grueling. The opposition and the attacks from the enemy, were intense. It was really, really hard.
Wow.
And it hit family. It had everything in our core. It was attacked. But I never heard the Lord say stop.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. This is the Aleph After Hours podcast. And today is a special day because we have our special guest, Lisa Matschek, right?
That is correct.
Okay, yes, the last name is, we've been working on it, but Matschek, that's the correct way to pronounce it.
That is.
The T is silent.
Yes.
No, the T.
T.
The T is silent, Matschek. So we're very honored to have you today. You and Rob Mazza just got done doing the Awakening Wonder Creative Conference.
We did.
And, I talked with a lot of people who were walking out. They had face paint all over themselves. And we almost face painted for this, but we didn't have the time. They were walking out with face paint, and I said, well, how was it? And they said, this was good. They're like, it was a different experience, it's a different expression, but it was good. And I was like, well, good. And so we just finished at least the Saturday. I think we're coming back again tonight, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right, yep.
Yeah, they're having another session tonight, and then you head back today or tomorrow?
I head back after service tomorrow.
Okay, so you're heading back Sunday after service. So it has been a privilege to have you here. It's been an honor, and then you are coming from Houston, so you'll fly back into Houston.
Right.
Tomorrow afternoon, I guess, after service.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yep.
so we're so excited to have you here. You are a friend with the house, but you are a friend with John West, one of our
Yes.
pastors here on staff. And so how long have you known John for?
I met John when this house brought in the Art of Hearing God and the Understanding Dreams and Visions course.
Okay.
And so I was one of the first teachers that brought it into this house at that time. And that would have been probably in the early 2005, 2006. So it's
Okay.
been a while. And that's where I first was introduced to John because he was in the course.
Wow. And so you taught the course when it
Yes.
came in. And
Yes, with Reese Saunders.
So what was John like back then?
Well,
That's the question.
he was just as interesting then as he is now.
Well, he tells us all
Yeah.
these stories, and I'm like, okay, he's watered down. Actually,
Yeah.
when I'm in youth pastoring and we have some things happen, he tells me what happened when he was youth pastor, and I'm like, oh, it's like sigh of relief. I didn't do that, right? And so he talks about how he's mellowed out over the years. I didn't know him back then, but
Yeah, he was the youth pastor back then when I met him. Yeah.
I hear a lot
He
of
was-
stories from that period.
Yeah.
So, well, we're great. We're so honored again, like we said, to have you here from the Awakening Wonder Conference, and we'll get into what you said because you teach with Streams.
Yes.
And in 2005 I didn't know that you were the teacher who came here to do it. So you've known them longer than I've known them. So really, I should be asking you questions about all our staff,
Yeah.
so I can know
How it's changed over the years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been almost 20 years.
it
So, anyway, jumping straight into who you are and kind of your story. We were talking a little bit beforehand. You are a art teacher
I am.
in Katy, Texas,
Correct.
and you teach advanced placement art.
I do.
So tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
what that is.
Well, so I have to preface this. I also teach from the beginning classes because I do have several preps. So I teach from the very early onset of the art students as well as then to the AP. And so, but as your question is, like, what is it like with the advanced placement? So with that it's college board level, and so the students that are taking that class, they're trying to put together a completed portfolio so they can present it to the colleges, and that they could earn credit so that they don't have to take certain courses when they go into the college years. So if they get accepted, they make a certain score, then they advance out of the courses that they have to take in college, and they can kind of bump themselves up.
Yeah.
And so that's the goal, is to help them prepare a strong portfolio that reflects their talents, an image of who they are, and present it to whatever that university is that they're planning on going to school.
Yeah, you talked about this the other day. You said that your students always say, "Well, Ms. Matschek, what do you want?" And you were like, "I don't want anything. Like, I want you to be you and develop who you are." So, like, how does a university judge art, so to speak? Like a student's portfolio. Like, what are they looking for?
And so that's an excellent question. So in the way that this is developed is that they come up with a question. So there has to be a pondering question, something that's important to them. So it could be a topic on, it could be a certain illness. It could be a study of, why is suicide increasing in our world? What are the influence of my culture, the culture that I'm in regards to the Western hemisphere? Or, so they come up with some kind of pondering thought or question that it's important to them. And then with that said, we call it a sustained investigation. So they have to do an exploratory study. So there's writing involved,
Okay.
but it's mostly about the imagery. So from there, they have to go and they begin to research topics and studies of that particular question that they're pondering, and then as they get their answers, or even in the investigation of the process as it unfolds, they show it in visual forms. So now they're drawing.
Drawing,
So,
painting,
drawing, whether
any type
it could
of
be mixed media, it could be, they could even bring in some 3D, elements into that. And then, so it's just, and it could be, some of it could be abstract. It still falls into the line of their elements and principles of art. So there's still a quality that they're quantifying, that's being quantified as far as their abilities. But the colleges want to see how they think.
I got you.
And they're looking at it through their art. So they're not just looking at the overall talent, so to say, or how experienced they are in the use of that media, but how are they able to think, and can we see that in their study?
Wow. That seems like it's a hard thing to like quantify.
Right.
And I mean,
As art's subjective.
it's
It
very
is.
subjective, and sometimes you'll see someone who's like, "This is amazing," and you look at it and you're like, "Eh."
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's just interesting for me. We have a lot of creatives, I think, right now. At least I'm around a lot of creatives. I always have been around a lot of creatives, I think, but they see the world differently.
Right.
Sometimes they live differently, and so it's very subjective.
Right.
And so that would be a hard thing to quantify. And I want to circle into this with what we've been talking about with Christianity, as far as like the arts and creativity in Christianity, because I mean you're an art teacher, and so you're around it all the time. But what does it look like for like the church, I guess, to stumble into this? Because at one point the church was like the leading entity in history for art,
Right. Right.
and something happened.
Yeah. And I think that what happened is the world started to own it, and the church became less willing to disciple. I think that's where the discipling came in, and they decided they didn't want to engage with the messiness that comes along with that.
That's good.
And so, so as the church let go of it, the world took it over.
Yeah.
And so now you find that these incredible artists are discovering self through the world, and unfortunately not through at the hands of the church.
Yeah, or the creator.
Because the creator.
Yeah. It's like Paul says, they're worshiping the creation rather than the creator.
Exactly.
And it's interesting. I've noticed a lot of creative people are just super sensitive. They're just super sensitive, and it's like they're trying to process. I don't know a lot about art, but I know like musicians, they go through like really, really dark seasons, and they say, well, this is where their greatest album came out of, because they're trying to process all that, not always in good ways.
Right.
And maybe that's what you're talking about when you say the church hasn't really discipled these people when it's hard sometimes.
Well, so like, for example, just this past couple of weeks, one of my students is working on her portfolio, and the question of her interest was exploring death. And she says, death fascinates me. Well, this child is Hindu. And so the direction that she's looking is looking at it backwards. As we as Christians, we want to look and celebrate life. We look at it through a living God, and she's looking at it in a place that offers no life. And so she's trying to explore this concept of death and reincarnation, and then she's trying to bring it into her art, and she's stuck. And so, again, it's a process. And so I didn't tell her not to, and that was the thing. This is her investigation, but I was watching it. I'm trying to see if I can find a place to disciple it. And of course, in the public school system, there's only so far we can go. We have to have the right words that, we don't cross the line, but at the same time, I can't deny the truth.
Exactly.
And so with that, she finally came to me and she says, I'm stuck. I can't seem to produce anything at this point. And so I gave her a pondering question. I said, what if you went another direction? How about trying to explore life first in those same cultures, in those same religions that you're embracing? What if you look at the concept of life first and then see how they respond after that? But bring it in another direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then all of a sudden, the colors that she's using are different.
Wow.
They're brighter. They're lighter. She's looking through the lens of something that's spiritually connecting with her, as we know. I know it's Creator God.
Absolutely.
She doesn't know
Absolutely.
that yet. But that's what she's starting. So I'm hoping that even in her exploration, she's going to find God along the way.
And it's such a subtle just redirect. I mean, she comes, and it's like discipleship. They come to you and say, hey, I'm stuck, right? And you say, let's just turn your gaze this way because you're looking that way and you're at a dead end. And so, I mean, that's a fascinating, and I think it's with art, you kind of talked about it in the school setting. We both were teachers. We were talking about that beforehand. It's a challenge. But, I mean, the reality is you have to let someone be themselves and gently guide them away, and just kind of like a bumper, just bump them onto the course. And so, I mean, when you're doing your art with your students, or they're doing the art and you're coming alongside them, I mean, you give these little pointers that kind of help guide them along the way.
Exactly.
And, I mean, so what happens if you have a student, like, she's talking about death, but you have a student who comes in, like, they want to do something that's like you're like, this is just not good.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you navigate that? That's a challenging.
Well, fortunately, I'm in a school district that we have some pretty strict restrictions.
Okay.
So there's some areas that they don't even get the opportunity to embrace because it's against the ISD,
That helps.
And that helps. So I have to say that. But I know just even through ministry, I mean, we talk about these things. So, when you hit that, I always think of myself as this mama that just has this gift of stop it.
Yeah.
And I do. I get this gift of, why are you doing that? How does it feel?
Yeah.
Well, stop it. And it's like, oh, never thought about that. So I rely on that a lot.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of like
or that's just odd.
that. Yeah. And it's one of those things with creatives. Like sometimes there's a tendency to dwell a lot on the pains and the negatives and the dark, and they get stuck in there and they want to process. And so, and it's not to say that if you're a Christian, you don't go through that.
Right.
So, like, what's the balance as a Christian between the emphasis of your work is kind of more dark, or your work is like, it's like Job, like, even though the tree's cut down, when water comes, it'll sprout again, right? Right. I mean, because there's a lot of imagery in the Bible that is negative, but there's always hope that's attached to the end of it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so with that said, when they're in that place of being stuck, you ask them, how are you going to get to the end of this story? How is that going to happen? And then it usually does open up a conversation. So you get to give them a glimpse of what that place looks like, where they will find joy, or they will find release, or they will find some healing, that it doesn't have to be a continual place that they have to remain.
Do you-
And then, but also teaching, because I get the opportunity to talk to them about visualizing. You know, that's some of the things that we've talked about this past weekend,
Yeah.
you know, and talking about visualizing. Have you ever visualized? Have you even tried to see the outcome? Have you even tried to see the positive outcome of what could happen? And in that process, to get there, once you visualize it, what do you think you need to do to help yourself along the way to get there, to
Absolutely.
get to that place? And so you kind of start to guide them.
Just
So
walk
there's
'em
some
out of the
guided
darkness.
imagery taking place, and questions, prompting them with the right questions, puts an accountability back on them. You know, they feel productive.
Yeah.
It didn't come from me, you know, because they don't, you know, they want to explore, you know, as we know our teenagers, you know,
Absolutely.
they want
Oh,
to,
yeah.
they have to be in control. So
Yes.
you let them, and
Yeah.
I'm not talking about manipulation
Yeah,
at
yeah.
all. It's like helping them identify and see who they are as they were created, as we know that.
Yeah. So like when you have someone who wants to dwell too much on the negative, you like they almost want to get stuck there. It's kind of like I was mentioning. I think because they're artists a lot of times are sensitive. Creative people are
Yeah.
sensitive, and the negatives can evoke a lot of emotion, which I think they can like harness in creative power. Maybe I don't know
It
energies.
does, absolutely.
And so, like, what would you, if we have some creatives watching who feel like they focus too much on the negatives in the dark, what would you do? You talked about visualizing, but what was some practical things that you would tell them? Like, hey, if you're stuck here and you're fascinated with death or darkness or this and you're creative, what are some practical steps you think they could do to, like, start stepping out of that or encourage them?
Right. So what is the saying? There's that, what you focus on, you empower, you know, and what you make room for. So with that said, it's like trying to redirect their focus and saying, what are you making room for? You know, what could you make room for? And again, just kind of addressing it that way. And so whether they're Christian or not, I mean, because like I said, I mean, we all fall into that place. But what do you want to focus on? What are you making room for?
Yeah.
And so, and flip that. And so if you're stuck here, again, visualize what the opposite of that is. So take a moment and, you know, see the opposite.
Yeah.
And focus there for a moment, and then see how that changes. How does it change your countenance? How does that change your feelings? How does that change your emotions?
Your appearance.
Your appearance,
Yeah.
all of it. Yes.
It's funny because I mean we're talking about creatives, but I do the same thing a lot of times with arguments in my mind that never come to fruition. You're imagining this confrontation that has, you know,
Yeah.
that's about to happen, and in your mind it's like all negative, right? And then you come in and you're like amped up with this negative energy and then all of a sudden it's just like the meeting goes a completely different way, and you're like, well, that changes everything.
Yeah.
And so I mean, we're talking about
Yeah.
creativity, but the same thing happens with if you have a lot of arguing, that you create these scenarios in your mind
You do.
that are negative, right?
Yeah.
So what is that pull sometimes that wants to pull us into that realm rather than the realm of like hope and positivity? I mean,
Well, I mean, obviously we know that negativity and that place of darkness isn't of God. It's not how we're created. And so one of the pondering questions that I can also ask is, how tired are you? I mean, because that pulls on your whole being, you know, and I'll ask that students, like, do you ever get to rest? You know, and I feel so sad for those that are just in those stuck places, because I think they never rest. There's never peace. They don't enter into that place of peace. And as we know, that peace is the potting soil to revelation, to understanding, to seeing things beyond what we're capable of seeing, because we are introduced into another sphere. This is one of the things that was in my, you know, early trainings with John Paul Jackson in the Streams Ministries, that, you know, encompasses a lot of the prophetic or the intuitive place for those, you know, if you've not heard the word prophetic, but the intuitive area of your lives, how we're created. And without peace, and it doesn't offer rest, and without rest, you can't hear.
yeah, that's so good. I mean, because well, just being here at Christian Center for, you know, the years I've been here, peace is when you hear the clearest, and it's like, okay, there's not that chaotic swirl around
Exactly.
you. You know,
Exactly.
it's so funny though. Like I was telling you about this before we started filming. My sister-in-law is an actress. And so when she was studying up in New York in university, she was with, there's a lot of the world like attracts a lot of the creatives that are attracted to this. I mean, she said there's just a lot of darkness. And so like they would be in class talking about their favorite movie. And I mean, people are throwing out dark movies.
Yeah.
And she's like, I love Indiana Jones. And everyone looked at her like she was a child. They were like, what are you, a child? And she's like, well, why? They're like, because it's all happy and joy and hopeful. And she's like, I'm not going to camp out where you're at, why do I want to dwell on the things that make me tired and miserable? And but it was amazing how they looked at, sometimes people look at people who are happy or joyful or hopeful, and they think they're emotionally shallow. But I mean, if you know what the battle it takes you to get from the darkness into that, right? It's actually harder sometimes. And so I just think it's fascinating how the world just pulls people into that.
Yeah, and I think that pull is, I mean, as we talk about the powers of darkness, and when you make room for it, then it actually gives the right for the enemy or the powers of darkness to invade a space. It's like you've given that place, space. And that's what they want to keep you from the area of really exercising true creativity, to experience the goodness and the strength and the power that is within us when we're right with God, when we are understanding the legitimacy of our inheritance. When we know that, but that darkness, those powers pull you, and they'll pull you deeper into that like I said, that cave or in that hole, in hopes that you won't reach the other side.
Absolutely.
To see your potential, to understand what you're capable of, and to see the beauty and the excellence that is within you.
Well, and I remember when I first was saved, and I would go into my bedroom. I'd get home from work. I'd go into my bedroom and I would read the scripture and I would meditate and visualize. Like in my mind, I'm just like visualize. I wrestled in high school, and so we always had to visualize our matches. That's what the coach is like. Visualize when you're at your bed. Visualize your takedowns, your reversals.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I would read the Bible and I'm like visualizing. Well, the thing is, and I didn't know this, and we talked about this weekend. So I'd visualize these scriptural things, and then all of a sudden, I'd find myself being led along in this encounter. Right, and all of a sudden I'm there with Jesus, and I'm sitting there, and hours are passing, and I'm like, it feels like minutes.
Yeah.
But it was this place of, I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna meditate and visualize this, and in that, it was like the Holy Spirit came and blew. It's like you're created to do this, to visualize and be creative, and the Holy Spirit would come in, grab me where I was, and start pulling me into the area where He wanted to bring me.
Right.
And we talked about this weekend as like a sanctified imagination. And so I think a lot of times when we're talking about creatives, it's almost like the enemy wants to put a block in them that stops them. Because any revelation you get from the Father, I mean, there in that season when I would have those, when I would meditate and do that, contemplative prayer, just meditative soaking, I didn't even know what it was. I was just like,
doing it.
I'm encountering the Lord. I want to do this every day. And so I'd run up into my room, I'd get home from work, and I'd spend 4 to 6 hours every day. I wasn't married, didn't have kids, so I had more time than I ever knew I'd have.
Yeah.
And I'd have these encounters, and I would come out with these scenes that I remember just saying, if only I could draw, if only I could color and paint what I'm seeing, what I saw. I remember several times I'd be like, you have this burden to communicate it, and I was like, I don't have the skills to do it, or what I heard.
Right.
And so for me, the side where the Lord is your obviously the base of revelation.
Right.
It produces such strong creative urges in us, rather than the other side, right?
Exactly.
Which wants to pull us down.
Right.
And so I when we talked about sanctified imagination, is this something that when you do your talk with your students, that you encourage them into
Yeah, in that too. I mean, in the fact that, I have to pull on God for creative voice, for creative words. How do I express this? How do I say this? How do I say it in such a way that they can receive it? And so, the understanding, like with the sanctified imagination, we as Christians, we think the word imagination, and we think, oh, you can't go there
Yeah,
because
yeah.
your heart will deceive you,
Absolutely.
and
You're
things like that, and
fabricating
yeah,
an
and that's an
experience.
experience, or that's you're believing a lie.
Mhm.
You can't do that, and that's so not so, because we serve a God of an immense creativity, and
Absolutely.
if we're spirit filled, He inside of us, it becomes a part of our very core of who we are. And like you said, the revelation, understanding, all that comes forth. So, but understanding that we're a tripart being, we're body, soul, and spirit. The body, speaking of the flesh, but our soul, that's the area that kind of encompasses that mind, that will, and the emotion, which is a very beautiful part of us. Now, yes, our soul can deceive us, our heart can deceive us, all of that. But if it's sanctified, meaning we recognize that third part, the spirit in the
Mhm.
spirit that we have, and when it engages with the spirit of God, and when that's touched and that is in place and in rule. So, like saying our alignment is, we're aligned. We're aligned with God,
Yeah.
the creator of us. And that comes first, that our focus, again, what are we making room for? Our focus is on the one.
Yeah.
It is on God. And we trust that God will lead our soul
Yeah.
in the right direction. We will follow. It's not that we allow our spirit to slumber. Don't allow your spirit to slumber. Then your soul gets so enlarged. And then, yes, that is the area that you can be deceived. So as Christians, we want to be able to enlarge our spirit. And
Absolutely.
how do we do that? With this scripture, like you were saying, meditating on the word, reading your scriptures. And sometimes it's simply just a hand-in-hand walk with God by the river, doing the things that He created you to love, and finding appreciation, and finding all your joy moments, and giving God praise for the moments that are in front of you, or that you're experiencing. And that enlarges your spirit.
Mm.
You have a spirit of appreciation. So I think that sanctified imagination is it's just that, it's proper alignment where your soul is led by spirit.
Mm.
And believing that and trusting that. Now we falter. We're not a perfect
Yeah.
man. We're not a perfect people, and God knows that.
Absolutely.
And so with that, and I think we make mistakes not with not on purpose.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's funny talking about all this. I have so many. Look, a few years ago, I was going through just a season of just high stress.
Mm.
I mean, there's a lot going on in my life with school and family and everything, and so I was going through this season, and I remember sitting down. I was talking with Jenny, and she said, "Well, where's the Lord? Right?
Mm.
Where's the Lord at?" And I remember closing my eyes, and the Lord took me to this field with a tree in the middle of a
Mm.
field, and it was like I was there, he was, and it was peace,
Yeah.
right? And so for that season, I remember it went, instead of letting like that atmosphere of anxiety and worry come on, which you can start falling down, and then it's like
Right.
tumbling downhill.
Right.
I would close my eyes and find the peace, and there,
Mm.
for like months, it was that tree in the
You
field.
could go back to that
I'd
place
go
too.
back, yeah,
Yeah.
and I will
Mm-hmm.
tell you this: like, it wasn't just a vain imagination. Like, it was a place where the Lord was drawing
Mm-hmm.
me in for peace, and I'd go there, and it would just be like peace would wash over me.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of power. I mean, God's a creator, but it's like you said, it's being able to discern. Are we in line? Like,
Yeah.
are we following our
Yeah.
spirit? Or are we following, our soul,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Yeah.
you may be taking us down the path that we don't know.
Yeah.
I think our concern, maybe in this house, because we do a lot with the prophetic,
Yeah.
is people who go into vain imaginations and then they want to say, I had this prophetic word, right? I never go into these because I want to have a prophetic word. I spend time there because I want to know Him, right?
Right.
That's
Right.
the thing. I want to know Him, and I want to
Mm-hmm.
know about His creation,
Mm-hmm.
and so I spend time with that being the motivation.
Exactly.
And I think, if your motivation is I need to get a word to put online, or then I think you can easily just follow what's in your soul potentially.
Exactly. And then you do run the risk of being deceived. Yeah. And we can't look for answers from another Yes, God uses us and uses people, to help us along the way.
Mhm.
But if that's your only way, like I can only get my answers through man to give me my direction,
Absolutely.
and then that falters, and that's not a good place to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
When we talk about this, like, it reminds me of like I have a whole section in my library on like mystics.
Mm,
And so, like, it's almost like this is something, you have unhealthy mystics, but then you have really healthy
absolutely,
mystics. And
they're
so
gifted.
they're
Yeah.
100%, but it's like they understood this. One of the books
Mm-hmm.
we have the students read in Aleph is the Brother Lawrence Practice of His Presence.
Oh, it's such a beautiful
I
book.
mean, it's so every time I
Mm,
read it, I'm like, oh gosh, like, it's like that
mm,
conviction of it really is this simple if you
yeah.
have the discipline to say, hey, I'm going to give this time to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about that same class. We talk about like solitude,
Mm-hmm.
silence,
Mm-hmm.
things that we don't think are spiritual disciplines.
Right.
Just getting away
Yeah.
to be with the Lord and allow that quietness.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas Willard talks about it in such a great way. Just busyness is
Mm-hmm.
literally the enemy of intimacy.
Right.
And so allowing that to come on us so we can have that place of just,
Mm-hmm.
Lord, I'm just going to meditate on you
Mm-hmm.
and go where you want me to.
Yeah. I can find, one of the things when you talk like practicing his presence, I mean, something as simple as me washing the dishes and standing
Yes.
at the sink, and I meet God in the bubbles,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's just like, oh, and usually too, it comes from a place of praise. It's like, God, I'm so thankful that I have dishwashing soap to do what I'm doing. Or, oh my gosh, look at these bubbles and watch the sun that's coming through the kitchen window. And when it hits and reflects, and there's just there's a different, we think about, oh, meditation has to be so-called spiritually deep.
A stoic.
And it's
Yeah.
and then I've got to say all these things a certain way. And you know what? God's just after you.
He is.
He just conversations. I mean, we don't need thus saith the Lord. We just need, hi God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here today. What are you up to? Yeah, I mean, just be real.
And that's what you guys, I think this conference, y'all emphasize so much is just finding joy and finding the Lord in anything and everything. I mean,
Yes.
Rob talked about his joy journal,
Yeah.
which we might talk with him when he comes into the podcast. But it's almost like you helping people rediscover their childlikeness.
Exactly.
And it's something as we get older and we mature, we kind of kill that childlikeness off in us, and it's almost like having to relearn.
Yeah.
You can wonder and be in awe at the most simple things.
Right. Right.
And that I think the Lord loves to connect with us in
Yeah.
the simple things.
When I watch my little granddaughter, I have a granddaughter that's now 27 months old, and she's she stops to look at the little ant on the ground go, and she's so fascinated by
Yes.
that, that little movement, and it's like one of those little teeny tiny ants. It's not even one of those big red ants.
You say that, but literally today, one of the students was holding my baby. And if you need a water, we can get you a water.
Okay.
One of my students is holding my baby, and she's only like, I don't know, she's 8 months right now. And so, but one of the people had a flag, a little, had little ribbons hanging off of it. And she was amazed. She was literally watching it, and she was like, amazed. And in that moment, I said, Lord, I said, for us to be this fascinated with your creation.
Right.
I said, what happened?
Exactly.
That we get so, I don't want to say jaded, but we just get kind of unsensitive to the fact of creation. In fact, when I was born again, and still today, the thing that would blow my mind, and I would just sit there and I'd be lost in thought and wonder, was just, I said, when I said, there has to be a God, because how else is there life?
Right.
I said, life. I said, if you're telling me there's no God, then how is life? I don't have enough faith to believe that we came out of a bunch of amino acids and lightning.
Exactly.
I don't have enough faith for that. I'm like, there is a God because of life. And it would just explode in wonder in my mind. And I'd just be there for 20 minutes just in awe
Right.
of the fact that life is here.
Right.
So it's rediscovering that awe and wonder,
Exactly.
that childlikeness,
Exactly.
which we
Yeah,
lose.
they don't miss. We do, and they don't miss anything. I mean, they're watching us,
Mhm.
you know, and there's talking about joy. I mean, they have their natural growing things, but they appreciate and see. I mean, my little girl, that little girl of my granddaughter, I can change something around even in the house, and she notices it.
Mm.
You know, they don't miss a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're very aware, and
And
I mean,
that's
and they're just like a sponge soaking up
Mhm.
everything around them,
Yeah.
and it's fascinating to watch them.
Mhm.
You know, like can't remember who said this, but it's so true. They said, you know, sometimes you have to learn to appreciate something by watching someone who has an appreciation for it.
Right.
So, like listening to
Right.
jazz music,
Right.
like you listen to it, you're like, okay,
Oh.
but then you watch people listen
Mhm.
to it, and they're like, oh, and then you're like,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, I can feel
Yeah.
this, you
And
know.
that's how I feel about it in my classroom. You know, when I watch, I can tell when my student has truly engaged with what they're doing.
Yeah.
I can tell when they're totally exhausted by it, tired. You know, I made the
Mhm.
comment about how tired are you? It's because you're not working in your wheelhouse. You've chosen something to do that's not in your wheelhouse. It's not where you're supposed to be right now.
Wow.
You know, you've got to find something else. We've got to enter into this
Yeah.
whole other way, or just, you know what? Sometimes it's okay to put that away and let's do something else.
That's good.
Yeah.
You know, not in the creative realm. Well, maybe a different stream of the creative realm. You know, if I try to get more organized administrator, I'm like, why am I so tired? Because that is not my wheelhouse.
Right.
And I'm not operating out of the grace that God has in my life.
Yes.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
step into something. He's like, I didn't grace you for that.
Exactly.
And it's just being sensitive to that.
Exactly.
You
Right.
know.
And the only way, you know, when we talk about that alignment, we're only going to recognize that if we're being led by the Spirit, because that's where we hear,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and that's
it-
where we know.
and
That's where we find out.
That's where
where
life
we
is.
discover.
Life is in the
Exactly.
river. Life
Exactly.
there's life in the river, and you
Right.
hop in the river and you say that's where you're going to find life,
Mhm.
wherever the spirit's flowing. And
Right.
you know, I mean, we talk a lot about the creative stuff, and it's exciting because for me, and when I was walking out talking with this individual, but that was the word. He was like, it's like a healthy modern mysticism.
Mhm.
It like brings us
Yeah.
all back into the church. And I was like,
Exactly.
yes. But you know, we do an inner healing, and in the inner healing, we do a lot of this. We pray over the atmosphere. This is an atmosphere that we have faith that God's going to show up, and we say, hey, let's imagine the Lord right now.
Mhm.
Now, a focus on Him. What do you see? What does He look
Right.
like? Right.
Mhm.
So we take them into this, and we've had people who come in, they'll sit down, they'll do that, and all of a sudden they go on this whole like vision with the
Mm.
Lord, and like we're just doing nothing.
Yeah. Right.
We're just like
Mhm.
they're processing this. Their eyes are closed. You can tell the Holy Spirit's touching them because their eyes are fluttering
Mhm.
as fast as
Yeah.
can be, and they're just having this encounter with the Lord. And it all started from that one little priming of, what does He look like?
Right.
And so imagine if the
Mhm.
Lord will come in and do that. And it's like when I was, 19, discovering the Lord, is how I would imagine this one thing, and He'd come in and just then go off from there. And so we
Yeah.
get so afraid though, because
Right.
we're gonna fabricate it.
Mhm.
But I've seen so many times where the Lord comes in and will heal someone or deliver someone or break something off someone from those prompted little, what does He look like?
Right.
Try to see His face.
Right.
What is he
Yeah.
smiling? What's He doing?
Right.
And it's just the imagination, I think, is just such a powerful thing the Lord has given us.
Right. It is.
And I think a lot of times when we talk about the prophetic, I mean, I don't know, when John says, I was in the Spirit, what does that mean?
Right.
You know? I mean, I'm not saying he was imagining things by any means, but there was this thing where he's like, I'm not necessarily in my right state of mind. I'm in the Spirit.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, my question is like, what does that look like to get there? And I
Right.
think you can see a lot of the mystics that try to process it out through their way.
Exactly.
But it's usually an
And it's
intentional
usually
thing.
it's empty.
Yeah.
It always comes out with a little empty conclusion.
Yeah. And then you're
Yeah.
like, wait, I need the steps. I
Right.
need the systematic way to,
Mhm.
get into the
Yeah.
spirit. But
Yeah.
so circling back a little bit to the Streams Ministries,
Yep.
because you connected and you teach with Streams
Mhm.
Ministries.
I do.
And you had mentioned that you connected with John Paul Jackson, who's
Mhm.
the founder of Streams, And so, well, even before we do that, tell us a little bit about how you, like your Christian experience and
Okay.
how you got into connect with John Paul Jackson.
Okay. So, as far as my Christian experience, I was never not a child that did not know the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
I always
Okay.
knew of the Lord.
Yeah.
I always knew. So I was in it. Surprisingly, I was raised Catholic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a father that was an ordained deacon in the Catholic Church.
Okay.
He came out of the Lutheran faith, and then it was about my junior high year. I know he converted to Catholicism. He had went through the seminary and all that, and
Now,
we
where
were
are you
part of.
from?
I at that time I was growing up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area,
Okay.
and so we were part of that time when the Catholics went through the
Charismatic
charismatic renewal.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So
So Francis McNutt,
oh
Francis
yes.
McNutt and all
Oh
that?
yeah.
Okay.
And so, however, my mother, when you talk about like that mystics or that that pole of that, my mother was always that intrigued beyond just what was in front of her, what was that, and so being brought up in a charismatic Catholic, rooted system, if you want to call it that, but my mother sung in the Catherine Kuhlman choir, so every time she came around, so I was exposed to that.
Wow.
Obviously, Benny Hinn was a big part too. My sister was healed. One of her legs was shorter than the other, and was healed by Kenneth Copeland. So I mean,
So your family, you pretty much grew up in this.
yes,
Okay.
I did.
Wow.
Yes. So I'm very thankful and grateful. So I can't say that there was a lot of religion, and so. In my choice, I am not a practicing Catholic now, but that was never something that my parents ever said that we asked of you. The only thing that they ever asked for us was that you always follow the Lord.
Wow.
And
That's
so,
healthy.
so it was a very healthy upbringing
There's not a lot of
in a
parents
faith.
who have that, like,
That
they're
flexibility,
like, yeah.
especially in
Oh
the
my
Catholic
goodness.
system. Yes.
Yeah.
No, they just said, and you always follow the Spirit. And I remember, and so because it is my roots, and so in my married life, we moved quite a bit, and we would always, you fall back to what you know. And so we would go to, it seems like everywhere we moved, we'd always start off with a Catholic church and just go, and go see how it's moving and how is it moving in the Spirit, which unfortunately we were very disappointed most of the time. And I remember talking to someone about, well, what kind of groups do you have? Do you have a charismatic group? And one of the responses at that time was to me was, sounds like you were bit by the Spirit. And I said, what an interesting way to say that. I said, actually, a bite heals. This is no bite. This is a forever thing. Yeah. And that was my response.
Yeah.
And I was like kind of going, whoa. And I don't say, but I have very positive things that have come out of my upbringing and through my, tradition. So I have to say I'm very lucky to say that I was
Yeah.
never not known the Lord.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing is your dad was Catholic, and like you were one of the few charismatic
Yes.
Catholics. I mean, they're a small minority. They're there.
Yes.
But they're really small. And
Yeah.
so, but they're wonderful. In fact, the church we work with in Bogota, their roots are from charismatic Catholics, and they just got so different that
Yeah.
they rented out a facility, and the priest or one of the people who were overseeing it was like, look, you guys just need to plant a church.
Yeah.
And they did. And so, but that's amazing because there's a lot of history in the charismatic. Well, there's a lot of history in the Catholic Church.
Right.
Yeah. Most of the mystics were
Exactly.
Catholics, and so they appreciate it at some level.
Yeah.
But so you do that. You're Catholic. Well, you're growing up with the freedom to just have a relationship
Exactly,
with the Lord. Was there a moment in your life, like a marking moment, where He's just like started like speaking to you, or you start having like dreams or vision, or was that just normal always?
It actually was pretty normal always with me.
Okay.
It really was.
Okay.
I've always been hungry for knowing the Lord, and I had good conversations with my mother. And my mother was very versed. She read a lot, and she was always really quick to point out things like if you dwell on things of the darkness, and how those are open doors. And so even in my growing up, I was very cautious and guarded, and I understood that side of what the enemy could come in and rob, steal,
Wow.
and destroy. And so I was very sensitive to that. So I guess it's kind of a part of the makeup of who I am, in a very soft and gentle way. The Lord is very soft and gentle with me.
Yeah,
And
he doesn't rebuke me harshly either. I mean, any even correction, it's like, hey, and it's like, oh, that's correction, but
yeah,
he's the same. So he's very soft and gentle
Yeah.
with you. I had a friend who it was like the opposite, and I'm like, he's not like that with me.
yeah,
And in fact, to the point of I'd mentioned I was an athlete, and I'm almost like, I just need you to tell me what I'm doing wrong. And he's like, no, let's just talk about this. And I'm
Yeah.
like, come on, Lord.
right. Make it easier and just tell me.
Yeah,
and
he's
it's
like,
not always.
no. So that's an amazing upbringing that your parents were that, I mean, just spiritually kind of wise. Your mom for sure. You've been having those, and then so when did you connect with John Paul Jackson?
So we were in another move, and we were moving to Florida. We were St. Augustine, Florida. And I had met someone at a Dallas conference, at a Benny Hinn conference. It was one of the film guys. And we were talking, and he was talking about a move. I was talking about the move, and he says, "Oh, you should go to such and such, and there's a church up there." And that was over in Jacksonville, though. But we were living in at that time we were moving to St. Augustine, so that was about an hour, difference or whatever, a little over an hour. And so I just took note of that, the mental note of that. And so once we moved, I was looking for the schools of what we were going to put our children into, whether they were young at that time, they were going into to kindergarten and first grade. And they were, so we're looking at the schools, and I wasn't very impressed with the schools in St. Augustine, Florida at that time, in the public schools. So the only other option was the private school, which was a Catholic school. And so I was looking into that, but I never got the full piece of that. And then I was reminded of this church that had a school connected to it that was up in Jacksonville. And so I thought, we're just going to go check that out. And so the family, we went up on a Wednesday night after my husband got off of work, and we drove up there and we went to one of their Wednesday night services. And met the pastor, we talked to him. And he started talking, and this is like a prophetic word. He was talking to us, and he was looking at my husband, and he was telling my husband, "You should bring me your resume. I wouldn't mind looking at your resume." And I thought, man, it's so odd. My husband's never been in ministry
Yeah.
before. This is not his wheelhouse. And I thought, that is so interesting. And Mark was going, what was that about? And so we left. And then the pastor that night had told us about this school. Okay, so I'm trying to get to the story, because I will get to John Paul in just a moment. And so telling about the school, I said, there's a school up there, and I've not decided. I said, Mark, I'm not feeling the peace. I'm not feeling about the peace of the public system here, and I'm not feeling the peace about putting them into the Catholic school here. I said, I don't know, what else is there? So I took the drive, and the whole way I'm going, this is crazy, Lisa. Why? You are not going to drive an hour up. What are you going to do? I don't make enough money to shop all day. 5 days a week,
Yeah.
a whole school year. What am I going to do with my time, with that, to take the children up to school? But I still followed through. And when I went up there and I started talking to the principal there, and next thing I know, I was in the middle of an interview. And I thought, that it was my resume standing right next to.
Wow.
We talk about that, how sometimes, so the pastor was he was hearing resume, but the placement was on me.
Oh, wow.
That it was my resume that needed to go that direction.
Wow.
And so at that time, she offered, it was a very expensive private school. The name of the school was Providence School. And I was going, again, that hour thing, back and forth. I was going, what? And so she told me, she says, if you wanted, the position, she said there was a part-time type position pay. It didn't pay a whole lot, but that it would give me a job. And so I'm going home going, we still can't even afford the tuition and all that. And so get home, and I talked to my husband, and then at that time my parents says, we will help with the finances of getting your children there. If you feel like it's the right place for your children to be, then we will help and assist with the funding of that tuition. And so I called the principal back, and I told her I'd take the job. And at that point she goes, well, I was just waiting for the right person to answer the call. I actually have a full-time teaching position available for you if you will accept it. And it will pay 100% of the tuition. But it was through there that I met a friend that knew a friend, and John Paul was coming through town. And they said, we know of this guy. He's here visiting. And you want to go with us? Picked him up at the airport. I was actually in the car that picked him up at the airport to take him to the little church that he was speaking.
And this is 2000.
That would have been, would that have been 2001, 2002?
Wow. Okay.
Somewhere around there, yeah. Yeah, so it was divine appointment, divine appointment. So going from talking to the camera guy in Dallas at the Benny Hinn to, going from there, talking to the pastor of the church, and then all of these connections, and then meeting John Paul.
Wow.
And I was so impressed just with his teaching, what he spoke on about the character, over gifting and whatnot. And I thought, I'm going to take one of his courses.
Yeah.
And I started going to all of his courses.
He's a guy, I never met him, but he's a guy when I hear about, I hear so many people when they talk about him. And I mean, they're just all like, he was a treasure.
Yeah.
He was a treasure to the body. And so I never got to meet him. I know the people at the house they took a lot of classes with him, and he was over, I guess, in Dallas. And so, so John talks about him a little bit, but he was like one of those people where it doesn't matter who I listen to. It's just nothing but amazing things to say. I almost feel like I missed out because I didn't. But I'm getting to talk to you, and that's like, you're a teacher under his ministry and everything. So,
and so the poll, and I know you were speaking about this in these last few times you've talked at the church, so I've listened to your sermons, and, it's always that yes. And for me, it was always, don't say no. If something presents, say yes. You could always change. My thing is like, but sometimes you'll miss an opportunity if you say no sometimes at the beginning. So my thing is like, just say yes unless you hear the Lord say stop, and then it's a no. But if you don't, and so that's kind of how I listen to God. If I don't hear it, God's asking me to step out in faith.
Yeah.
So that's my rhythm.
That's such a good, I don't want to jump over this because it's such a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how many people don't do anything because it's like, I'm waiting for the Lord to tell me. And coming out of your mouth, you're like, look, you get peace. You don't feel bad about it. You start doing it. And for you, it's the Lord saying, hey, it's going to require more faith on your end to step out without that audible or internal, whatever.
Exactly.
But if he says you're listening for a no, that's what it is.
If I don't hear it, and I know because I know my spirit's forward.
Yes.
I mean, my heart is right. My intentions are good.
Yes.
And they're pure. I just want to go after you,
You
God.
get a lot of people off the sideline with that.
Yeah.
I mean, early in my walk, I was like, I've shared about it. I was very hesitant, and it was a gardener in Colombia that told me this, and I was like, he is good. What am I like? He'll tell me no.
Right.
But it's that fear of like, is my heart's wicked? I have a wicked heart. I have and you're scared to be deceived. But I mean, he's so good to say, hey, stop that.
Yeah. So I never quit the training. We went through the training, and that's how I developed. So after becoming certified as a teacher, and then you teach so many courses, and then you become an instructor. So I'm at an instructor level with all their courses. And then I was part of the online dream interpretation course that they had, and I went through that whole rigorous process of being trained. For one, I had to pass that. I had to, under John Paul's approval, you had to pass 2,000 dreams, right? Interpretations. It was brutal. It was brutal, and so I was their first released master certifier.
Wow.
I don't say that to brag because
No.
The process was grueling. The opposition and the attacks from the enemy, were intense. It was really, really hard.
Wow.
And I mean, it hit family. It had, everything in our core. It was attacked. But I never heard the Lord say stop.
Wow.
And so I always went forward. And there were times I had to look at my husband and just say, I don't know what to say other than trust me. Yeah. Just trust me. Don't give up on me. Yeah. Because it was, I was in a dark place times.
Well, your husband, in all the, and your husband's name is Mark.
Yes.
Y'all been married how many years?
We just celebrated 36.
36 wonderful years.
Yes.
Wonderful years, right? And so where is he at in like all the stuff with like John Paul? Is he like right there, like he's dream interpreting and everything, or?
Honestly, no, he's not. He's not. He is fully supportive. He definitely moves into the gift. He has the gift, um, but he's still on his journey.
Okay.
He's still on his journey as far as how that fits into his
Yeah, his world.
makeup
Yeah,
and his
yeah.
world and to his wheelhouse of who he is. But he's very fascinated about it. He believes in it.
And he
He's
supports you, which
supportive.
is amazing. That's why
Supports
I'm
me.
asking,
Yeah,
because you're talking about
absolutely.
getting this whole like certification, teacher credentialing
Oh
under
yeah, no,
Streams.
and it was
Wow.
yeah, it was
He
a
was
lot of
supportive.
sacrifice on his part. It was a lot
Yeah.
of sacrifice on the family.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you have to go to Dallas a lot, or
They at that time we traveled all over the United States. The courses were everywhere, and you just had to kind of follow. And then in training,
and how
you
you
had to.
balancing that with like kids and everything?
It was it
That
was
was the
interest.
grueling.
That was
Okay.
part of the grueling part. Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
can imagine.
Yeah.
So it took you. How long did it take you to go through that?
That whole process of training, well, and I was doing the online certification, Dream and certification at the same time I was doing the teacher's training.
Oh my goodness.
Both of those. So I felt like I was getting beat up every which way.
Wow.
Just that, it's at least how it felt at times. That whole process was probably for me about 4 years,
Wow.
which
Wow.
was turbo time.
That's like
Was
how long I
turbo
was
time.
in seminary, and
Yeah,
then you're
but
in
but
Dream.
to do all of that really was a turbo time thing. Like it was just
There's
like,
probably grace on it to do
there
it
was a
too.
lot there was a lot of grace on it.
Yeah. So like talking about that whole process, is Dreams, is that just something that you're kind of gifted in? I know.
Well, I'm going to say I can't deny the fact that God has given me that gift of interpretation. But more than that, it's the passion. Oh
The
my gosh! I mean, if you tell me, maybe I just lit up. I don't know, because I have seen how it has changed me personally to have that language with God, and how He speaks to me, and how I don't have to miss out on any communication with Him on a 24-hour. When I go to sleep, I know that the Lord is going to speak to me. I won't.
So
So
I asked
all
for
of that, I'm
that.
excited for it. But I've also seen how it can change others,
And that's
and that's to me is like going, oh my gosh.
when John started going down to do it in Colombia, it just they say it changed their church, because all of a sudden the dreamers come up, and my wife every night dreams every night, and I mean we're not talking like James Cameron movie plots, simple. We're talking like really intricate dreams, and I'm just like I have no idea. When I dream, thankfully, the Lord's like, Scott, don't do that, and then I'm like, I think the Lord's talking to me. I always pray for more dreams, but and I love it. But it is a gift also, because I remember I was down in Colombia, and I was translating for John, who was interpreting a dream in Spanish, and I hear this dream, and I'm like, and I tell John the dream, and he's like, that is this, and this, and I mean, the Spirit of God comes, and I'm like. And after the person starts crying, and I turned to him and I said, "Don't you ever say that's not a gift." I said, "She said that is a gift." I mean, we can learn and grow and stretch, but there's also people who are gifted.
So I think that's the imagery, because I see, just that imagery, and to ask, it's always God. What are you showing me? What am I seeing? What does that say? I always have that communication going on, and that's the same in my own classroom. With the art classroom, I think that's why I'm able, because there's so much imagery.
Yeah.
So I feel at home. So teaching art to me is very easy, because helping others see their potential and pull out of them their creative purpose. And dreams are that. I mean, they're very personal. That's in God's telling and having dialogue with an individual about themselves. And when they share, just like an artist is sharing something very personal, and that's why sometimes they're very, very introverted, because it's so personal to them and it's about them. They flow through, like you said, the darkness of themselves or the light of themselves, depending on where they're at and what they're experiencing. They sing or dance or, paint or sculpt or whatever through their experiences. Well, when someone shares a dream, they're sharing an experience of themselves. They're sharing a part of who they are with you.
Wow.
And we have to treasure that. We have to love from that place. We have to no judgment. It has nothing to do with us.
Hmm. It's funny because, I mean, they really are. You realize how much of the world dreams when you start actually asking people about it. Like my little boy dreams, and he dreams. He's had dreams where he was, kicking a cat through the ceiling of the church. And
Okay,
I was
love
like,
it.
oh, okay,
I
that's
like
good,
that.
And I was
Yeah,
like,
warfare.
okay, yeah,
There you
no. So
go.
he's getting those
Yeah.
dreams, and so now we're trying to create a culture where if they say anything about a dream, we're like, "Oh, did you dream? What'd you dream? What'd you?"
Yes.
And then we're
Absolutely.
like, "Well, hey, okay, well," and
Mhm.
we're not gonna say, try to break it down for them, but we're gonna
Mhm.
be like, "Well, maybe that means this,"
Mhm.
in simple terms, but
Right.
or sometimes it's like for us, and it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. The first time I embraced, well, I've always had that open door policy, our husband and I, as far as in the night, because, the enemy tries to steal the dream life from children
Hmm.
through nightmares,
Yeah.
because they've not seen a prey. I mean, some children have seen some horrific, terrible, and
Yes.
lived through some experiences, but for the most part, their dream life is very innocent, and the enemy knows that this is an avenue that God can use to communicate with them and does speak to them, and so he tries to shut it down with that fear tactic, and
Absolutely.
steal it from them, and so teaching your children that they can do warfare in the night season, teaching them very, very young how to do that. It's lucid, be aware of what you're dreaming. And so with the open door policy, when our children were frightened or scared, we always said, absolutely, you can come find us in the
Yeah.
night. You can always come find us in
That's
the
good.
night. And so, but my one child was experiencing these pretty regular nightmares. And I thought, okay, I am done with this. This is ridiculous. The enemy, you do not have any right here, kind of thing. But I can say that all day, but I thought, you know what, but to train them. And I said, sweetie, and I would tell her, I said, do you know that you can put a stop to this? And I said, next time you go in, you just ask God, you ask Jesus to come in and help you find a way to get rid of that bad guy or
Yeah.
whatever it was that, she was dreaming at that time. And so one morning she comes down and she goes, Mama, I started to come down. And then I remembered what you said. And I went back up to my bed and I asked God, I said, give me that dream back. And she says, that time I went into the dream and there was this big shovel in the corner and I just dug a hole and I pushed him in. She was
Wow.
5,
Wow.
you know.
I mean, when
Yeah.
when I was 19, I got saved. I had a recurring dream every night, and I have no grid for this. I grew up Baptist, I have no grid for dreams, and so every night I'd go to bed and I'd wake up, and in my dream I'd wake up in my bed, I'd look up, and then the door would open and a demon would come in my room and start walking towards me every night, and I'd wake up just
Yeah.
and then it got to the point where I remember just laying in bed. It's like, oh my God, I don't even want to go to sleep because I know this. I know what's about to happen. And so, but I remember one night, I got so angry that instead of in my dream, backing up against, in the corner of my bed, I threw my covers off, which, that's like your protection and, you hide under your covers. And I'm 19, maybe even 20 at this point. I throw my covers off in my dream and stand up to I'm about to double leg take down this thing. And the minute I do that, poof, it disappears. Never happens again.
Wow.
And it
Yeah.
was such a fear tactic,
Right.
but I
Yeah.
had no, see, I was so overcome by fear in my dreams, and for
Right.
some reason that night it was like the anger, the fight of the Lord was on me, and I'm like, I'm just about to, if I go down,
Yeah.
I'm going down swinging,
There you go.
and that was
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
And so,
It is
but
enough. Yeah.
that was it reminds me that, and, I wasn't a kid, I was a young man at that time.
Yeah.
But dreams are such a powerful. I mean, I can tell. Even if my daughter or my son, really my daughter, if she has a dream that wasn't a good dream, I can tell because she wakes up and it affects you.
It does.
Like it completely affects you.
Absolutely.
And I remember I had a dream about one of my teachers when I was in 8th grade, and that dream stopped me from ever really forming a relationship with that person. And
Wow.
it was just a dream where I was afraid in the dream, and
Yeah.
I never got near him. And it's that I literally
They're
this
powerful.
they
It's
are.
powerful.
This week I had one of my cousins reached out to me, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm making coffee, and I get a text from, and we love each other, but we see each other maybe once every 3 or 5 years. He's in New Orleans, and he texts me. He's like, "Oh my God, Scott, I hope this text doesn't wake you up." He goes, "I had a terrifying dream about you and Camila. I woke up crying and da da da." He goes, "Please tell me y'all are okay." I was like, "Yeah, we're okay." But I mean, it was
So real
it
to
was
him.
warfare. I think that he was experiencing on our behalf. I think.
Yeah.
But it was so real to him and so powerful. He says and he's like 40 something years old, and so he's like, "Are y'all okay?" I'm like, "We're okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry."
But the fact that he paid attention.
Exactly.
In the Jewish culture, I know they treasured those dreams so much that, I mean, they go into repentance if they've missed nights of dreams, because they know that connection with God is so important, and they put that much relevance on the impact of dreams and how important dreams are.
What not that we can manipulate things, but like what's a way that we could, someone who says, "I want to increase my dream life." Like, I mean, other than just asking and praying, is there
Yeah, like you
that's
said,
it?
there's nothing we can do to manipulate, but we have to, number one, believe God wants to speak to you.
Yeah.
Understand that we have a 24/7 God.
Mm-hmm.
The Spirit doesn't slumber.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that, and the Spirit is awake. Why would God not want to talk to you? If He's talking to you in your waking hours and when you're awake, why would He not want to talk to you when you slumber? Because your spirit's not sleeping.
Yeah.
And His Spirit's not sleeping. His Spirit's hovering and looking for communication and, relationship. And so that's where, and it's best time God's going to speak to you in so many ways, because your soul is still.
Yeah. Your mind's not
Your
active.
mind's not active, and it's the best place to be. So I think, if anything, it's just valuing your dreams, asking God, believing if I ask, if I knock, He will answer, and knowing that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you notice that you have more dreams in the middle of the night or early morning, like like on Saturday mornings when if you sleep in a little, do you have more dreams?
I do. Yeah. And so, yes, because my 5:15 alarm clock kind of ruins a little of that.
You're having a revelation with the Lord, and all of a
when you're
sudden,
going through the
beep, beep.
slumbering, when
Yeah.
you're in that slumbering time. But it's it's kind of, because they call it what is it that, there's a word for it, and I just went blank
Not
on
lucid.
it. No, but it's like that part where that
between.
in between when you're kind of asleep but kind of waking up.
That's
when you're
where I have a lot of my
There's a
dreams.
word for it, yes, and that's probably one of and it's the same thing when you're just about to go to sleep. You're asleep, but just about to go into the deeper sleep. Those are those
like
two
REM.
areas, the REM sleep kind of areas, but it's that waking hour and that going to sleep where you can receive some of the strongest revelation from God.
I have become a morning person because it's when I can get my quiet time, because when my kids wake up, that ain't happening.
Yes.
And so, but I love mornings when I can linger and just kind of like, I hate to say this, my wife hates it, I love it, but I'll hit my snooze like 20 times. And then my wife's like, "What are you doing?" And so I'll just keep hitting it because I'll start dreaming.
Really?
I'll just dream and I'll stay in
interesting.
dreams and stay in dreams. And so I had to change my alarm to like birds.
Yeah.
So it's not something that's like agitating her, but that's when I'll have a lot of my dreams is in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'll just kind of come in and out and come in and out. It's like an excuse for those people who want to sleep in late. It's, the dreams. Because at night it's very rare, but like that I'll have one in the middle of the night
Do you
that
just
wakes
go
me
cold
up.
out?
Yeah, Camille says, my wife says I die, and then the Lord resurrects me in the morning.
There you go.
And so maybe I need to
So it is. It's just it's just it's that passage time when the soul has gone to rest, and your spirit is still very active. Is awake, and it's just a beautiful time to communicate with the Lord.
So people who have like, are there some people who they've shut that down because of fear? So it's just, praying and saying, "Lord, if I've shut this down."
Exactly. And it really is that simple. We don't have to overcomplicate our communication with God.
Yeah.
Just ask and trust and believe that this is what He wants.
So what about like people who have like nightmares? That's my wife. Like her wife, my wife has had a lot, and it was actually connected to some generational things that we had to end up dealing with.
And that's the identifying why the nightmares, because they can are they intrusive, or is there an open door?
Yeah.
And it's that discovering that. Yeah. And sometimes that just takes somebody of wisdom to talk through
Oh
and to
gosh,
help
yeah.
you through
It took
that. It's going to
it took
require that,
some
yes,
sessions,
to get to the bottom of
mhm.
what that is. Because I mean, an intrusion, I mean, we just cut it out. But if it's like you said, generational, if there's something that has to be dealt with in order, because there is a door of access, and then that can be a whole discovery process.
It was.
Yeah.
It was a whole
Yeah. But
layered discovery process.
some people just either shut down their dream life and don't deal with it, or they, or like your wife, we deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hers is like every morning it was like, oh my
it's not
gosh.
okay.
And then she'd have really, every once in a while she'd have some good ones, but but we had to walk through some stuff, and it was layers of like discovering, and then we did it with one of our Terry, who does our healing and deliverance stuff, and it was some pretty interesting generational discoveries. But once we broke that, I mean, she used to every night the darkness would start to come, and she'd be in bed, and like this anxiety would come on her. But that's been like broken. So
That's
it
lovely.
took some breaking,
Yeah.
but
And God, God allows it.
yeah.
Unless it's in truth, like I said, if there's different things, but God allows so that you discover
So you start probing and
So
say,
you
what's
start-
going on here? And
to deal
so,
with that.
so what about someone like me who just dies and then wakes up resurrected in the morning? Do I need to like lay my sleep on the altar and be like, Lord, you have
Yeah,
take
probably
my
a little
sleep?
bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just like, she gets mad because I was like, all right, night. And then I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah,
So if she waits 3 minutes to ask me something, I'm out.
yeah. And always journal. We've talked about that joy journal.
Joy journal.
You journal those dreams too. Even if it's just if you can't even remember hardly any of it, even if you just put one word down on a piece of paper, that's honoring God.
Yeah.
Just do that.
I know.
And you'll find that the next time it's maybe a few more words, and the next time it'll be a few more words.
So-
and before you know it, you will start to.
A lot of
Yeah,
dreaming.
you'll
And
have
I have recordings where I've like woken up and done it, but they're like, few and far,
Yeah.
Pastor Tim dreams every night. And, they're
Epic. Yeah. That's some good stuff.
They're epic dreams, and so I dream, and it's like, I walk into my house and have to throw out a cat,
Yeah.
which is obvious,
Yeah.
but I haven't actually, I'm just giving you an
Right.
example.
I hear you. Yeah.
But yeah, it's fascinating because I have a few that I do write and record when I'm just bad. Like I'll get a dream in the middle of the night, and I'm just like, I'll go to wake up, and I'm like, sleep overcomes me. So I just need to lay that on the altar. My sleep is.
Well, so this whole conversation on this is so exciting because we know it's in time too.
Absolutely.
In the last days,
and
pour out His Spirit on, and all that. So that through that whole scripture about it's a part of our destiny.
yeah.
It's a part of our future. It's a part of our end.
And I've had some of the most powerful things from the Lord have happened in dreams recently since being at Christian Center, really, and maybe one before. But I mean, life direction things, and I'm just like, wow! Like I would not have received that if I was awake. Like I would have been like, well, that's the enemy because that's so left field.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was, when my wife was getting her citizenship, that was like one of the big. I had two big fulfillments that once we hit them, it's like, well, what do we do? And so one was me finishing school, and the other was her getting her citizenship.
Yeah.
It was like a 7-year process, and so it was a huge deal.
Yeah.
And so we're down like leading up to her being sworn in as a citizen. I know the Lord's like, I'm about to. I was like, I'm about to have an encounter with the Lord. I could just feel it in the air. About to have an encounter with the Lord, and it's about to be a directional word.
Wow.
Because we've come to that crossroads where it's like, here's what's next, right?
Right.
So I could feel it. I could feel like whatever, I don't know, the angels swirling around me, like the days leading up. I'm in New Orleans, and I remember I'm in Slidell walking with my uncle, who's an artist. And so I'm walking with him, and I'm just like, Lord, you're about to say something, right? I'm about to like turn a corner, and there's going to be an angel, and he's going to be like, Scott. And that's what I'm expecting.
Yeah.
So I go to sleep. I'm like, well, maybe tomorrow. So I go to sleep, and in the middle of the night, I have this dream that it's like, I mean, crisp, clear as day. The Lord is talking to me. He gives me this complete directional word that is so left field. And I wake up, and immediately I know what the dream means. I'm like, that means
that's
this.
good. Yeah.
And so I write it down, and I mean, I thought I was going to have, I thought I was going to see the Lord, but he showed up in the dream and told
Right.
me essentially through the dream
Yeah.
the
And
next
it's a clear word.
directions of
Yeah.
our life.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, dreams are that powerful.
They are.
And so how often do and I know they're about to come knock on the door because they're like, where is
Oh, yeah.
Lisa? So how often are dreams directionally, are they usually directional words, or are they usually like, hey, this is what's going on words, or?
So a lot of it has to do with your connection with the Lord. So I most dreams are personal and are about you. So I would, I'd say 75% of dreams are what we call intrinsic. They're about ourselves. Extrinsic dreams, where they're going to be about other people, are depending on people that, that are very sensitive to others, that are intercessors in churches and whatnot like that. But so dreams are are much more personal, and God is after our heart, right? He wants the purity. He's coming after his bride, right? And so he's preparing us. And so I think dreams, yes, God gives directions. That's one of the types of directions that God gives, but that's just one piece of it. I think the heavier, weightier dreams that come in greater magnitude are the ones that are personally dealing with our personal self.
Absolutely.
And it's just
Yes.
it's the best place to, I mean, I would rather get correction and personal direction. I'm not talking about life directions, but my own personal ways that I need to improve self so that I can be ready for that coming.
Yeah.
There's going to be much more greater of that.
And that's mainly what I get. The Lord's like, oh, hey, this is in your heart.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and so he orchestrates a dream that puts me in a situation where I'm like, oh, I have fear there. And he's like,
Yeah.
you do have fear
Exactly.
there. You need to deal
That's
with
right.
that. Let's work on
That's
that.
right.
And
That's
so
right.
that's what most of mine are like.
That's what most of mine are like.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's even when I'm, having, personal relationship with the Lord,
You're
on a
doing
daily
well.
walk,
Yeah,
and I'm
you're
doing
doing
well.
well.
But I mean, I'm doing well, but the Lord wants me better.
You can go deeper,
I can
right?
still go deeper.
You can go deeper.
I can receive greater revelation and have better understanding if I deal with everything. And there's always another layer.
Yes.
There's always another layer to it.
Always. I think most of what I deal with when people tell me their dreams is they think it's about other people, when in reality it's about them. And because I don't know why some people are like, it's like, oh, this is about to happen to this person. I'm like, well, no, I think that's more showing the Lord like, hey, this is what's going on with you and your heart and stuff. And so
Right.
that's, like you said, the majority.
Yeah.
So any other tips for people who are like, hey, I'm getting into dreams, or I want to dream more other than journaling, praying, anything? John talks about like looking at things in your room and remembering them to maybe activate that part of your brain,
Exactly.
maybe.
Yeah. So that's that right brain, awakening the right brain. And that's a lot of what we were doing this weekend with the, awakening the wonder, the creative side. And so, and I think use wisdom with who you get your training from. You want to make sure that you're training and then people that you're asking that they have a relationship with the Lord,
and they
that
can tell you no.
Yes, and that you can trust, them, and but mostly I think it's just ask and you shall receive. Put some value on it.
Simple.
Desire it. Just desire it.
That's it. It's a simple desire and a hunger, but it is funny how people will bounce around to different interpreters because they're looking for the one.
For the answer that they want.
They want. And so I always say, go to the person who doesn't have a problem telling you no, and have them do it first.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I'm guilty. I've gone between John and Pastor Tim, and I'm like, wait, no, maybe this. No, maybe this. No, y'all are both saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, Lisa, thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Thank you for this time.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can tell you're passionate about dreams. You're passionate about what you do, creativity. The conference has been great.
Good.
The Sanctified imagination and just touching that side of us, and then the evangelistic. We didn't even get into the Burning Man. My gosh, there's so much that I wanted to go into. Maybe part 2 coming soon. So, but thank you so much for your time, Lisa.
You're so welcome. I've enjoyed every moment of it.
It's been good. It was easy.
Yeah,
Huh?
it was good. You
wasn't
did
bad.
good. You didn't
Okay.
beat
No,
me up.
you did good. You're the one on the grilling side,
Yeah.
right? I'm just the prober.
Yeah.
And so, can you pray with us before we close out?
Sure.
And whatever the
Absolutely.
Lord puts on your heart.
All right. So, Father God, I just pray for self, and for others, that that we will come to this realization of who you are in us, and that how you have equipped us and that you have designed us, that we will come into the legitimacy of our design and that you will make it known. I just ask that you stir up the gifts that are within each of us, and that you will just light a fire in our soul, in our spirit, so that we will want to have a continual engagement with you, that you will just be with us, walk with us, teach us, train us. God, give us a heart that is humble. Give us a heart that is teachable. And complete us, Lord. Amen.
Amen. That's a great prayer. So thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you, everyone, for watching. If you liked it, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, turn that bell notification on, and stay tuned for other episodes that are coming in the future. So see you guys later.